Welcome! This week we're going to be speaking about spiritual abuse, what the warning signs are and how to avoid it. Hello, it's Amy Garner here, and this is your place to be if you're a strong sensitive who wants to have success on your own terms. I'm going to run through 10 of the most common forms of spiritual abuse, whether that's by teachers or healers. Often this kind of spiritual abuse isn't purposeful, so it's not about saying that the people who are contributing to and creating spiritual abuse are bad or inherently evil. Sometimes it's just due to a lack of education, awareness and knowledge. So let's start at the top. The first form of spiritual abuse I'm going to talk about today is self-aggrandizement. You know, when someone's really into promoting themselves and how great they are, and they just seem to be coming from a place of ego. This form of spiritual abuse can be dangerous because when someone is coming from that place of ego, rather than teaching from a desire to serve, to help, to assist, coming from a pure-hearted place, they can put their own needs first, and the class or the healing sessions or whatever it is that you're involved in becomes very much about fulfilling their needs and making themselves feel good, and that can be at the cost of their pupils or their clients. The second form of spiritual abuse I want to talk about is hierarchy. This can occur more in groups, so it's not necessarily just a teacher acting in an egotistical way. It can be when a group of people or a subgroup of people within a larger group position themselves as having more expertise or divine or knowledge, spiritual knowledge, or more of a divine connection. Perhaps they may be saying that they are particularly connected to a very powerful guide, or that they've had certain past lives that equips them to be more knowledgeable spiritually in this lifetime. It may be that they use some kind of spiritual jargon or explain spiritual concepts in a very complicated way and kind of shroud what they're doing in mystery and mystique. The third form of spiritual abuse is competitiveness. Sometimes, though it's very rare, you can get a teacher who is competitive, envious or jealous of pupils who show particularly some kind of high level of ability, or perhaps just for being, really, really popular or having more attention on them than that's being taken away from the person who is leading the group. This is very rare, however. It's more common to have competition in groups and classes spiritually when perhaps people don't feel that they have got their needs met fully within the class, perhaps with the teacher, or that the classroom isn't being held in a way which emphasizes that actually we have to kind of connect with each other and we're all at differing levels of ability, though none of us is better than the other person. Fourth form of spiritual abuse I wanted to mention is when there are unidentified serious mental health issues. So if you are opening up in a group for psychic development or any kind of spiritual development, perhaps even if you're opening up emotionally, in an environment for personal development, if the group leader has not identified during the intake process that a person within the group has severe mental health issues, perhaps addiction problems or a personality disorder, this can really be very dangerous if you're opening up energetically, spiritually and emotionally, because there can be a risk of more extreme behaviour, acting out, dramatic episodes, and just an unhealthy psychic energy which is not good to be exposed to in close quarters in that particular way. The fifth form of spiritual abuse is when the teacher or the healer or the spiritual person that you're engaged with, either one-to-one or within a group, oversteps boundaries or changes the terms of your agreement without prior agreement or discussion first. And this can be very confusing if you think you're relating to someone in a particular way. Perhaps they are meant to be your teacher, but then they overstep some boundaries and it seems like they're oversharing, and perhaps they're positioning themselves more as a friend, but there's not really been any discussion of the change of the relationship. Or perhaps the appointment times or class times keep changing, or things that have been agreed aren't honoured. The sixth form of spiritual abuse is when there is projection of some kind. So this is when there is something going on in your unconscious and their unconscious that's being activated. It's kind of perhaps triggering to both parties. You may find that there's some kind of a reenactment going on of an unhealed part of your teacher or your healer's personal life. And this is basically when the healer or the teacher hasn't done enough work on understanding their own story and their own personal wounding. So what's happening is it's being activated in the therapeutic relationship or in the classroom, and the healer or the teacher doesn't have the skills and the awareness to be able to process that and deal with it without it impacting your relationship. The seventh form of spiritual abuse is when there's any kind of power play. At the most extreme, this is when there is a form of bullying. It can be psychological bullying, not necessarily overt. You know, everyone thinks of a bully as someone who's a physical bully, but actually bullying can take place very subtly. It could be in the form of having your needs ignored, being put down, being overly criticised, you know, in an unconstructive way, belittled, shamed, excluded in some way, for example. The eighth form of spiritual abuse is favoritism. So this is often not completely unintentional. It can take place in groups where there's perhaps certain individuals, colleagues or classmates that have a louder presence within the group. Perhaps they're more vocal, they're more active. They need more attention possibly, and they can be more flattering or ingratiating themselves with the group leader, and inadvertently the group leader falls into this pattern of giving more time and attention and perhaps preferential treatment to those people who are the most engaged, whereas the quieter members, who may be equally as interested but perhaps not as vocal about their interest, tend to then get overlooked or pushed to the side, which is unfortunate. This is particularly dangerous if the people that are getting overlooked have actually had similar experiences, perhaps within their birth family. So if they are highly sensitive adult children of dysfunctional families and they end up in a group situation or a classroom situation where they are experiencing a similar kind of dynamic where their needs are not being met, again, they're perhaps feeling silenced or ignored or any of those kind of things, that can be quite harmful to those particular type of people. So if you are one of those people, you just need to be aware that you need a teacher that has that kind of knowledge and can hold the space and make sure that the attention and time that they give out to their pupils is evenly spread and inclusive. The ninth form of spiritual abuse is when the teacher or the spiritual healer doesn't have a proper understanding of ethics. And this actually can affect all of the forms of spiritual abuse that we've talked about so far, and it can be the cause of many of those forms of spiritual abuse too. Many people who are acting in a way which is actually harmful do so inadvertently. It's due to a lack of an awareness or a lack of education, not by a desire, a will to inflict harm on the people that they are serving, whether that's clients, pupils, or people in a group situation. But it's really important, if you're looking for a spiritual teacher that you can trust and open up to and be coached by and schooled by and unfold with spiritually, that you do check out, that their training has given them a theoretical understanding of how to put their clients' needs first, so that there is this avoidance of harm. And the 10th form of spiritual abuse is any dogma. So dogma is when you join a spiritual group of some kind, or perhaps you're working with a spiritual healer and you're told this is the way and this is the only way and this is the only way of seeing the world. And it's often down to what you believe. You have to believe this, and if you don't believe this, then often it's communicated there's some kind of penalty. So within very hierarchical, semi-religious groups, there's certain groups like this that are very dogmatic in terms of what their members are told to believe, and anyone that doesn't abide by the rules of that group and the beliefs of that group then is kind of essentially excommunicated and kicked out and never spoken to again. And obviously that's very unhealthy. There should be a kind of atmosphere where there's a healthy level of discussion, questioning, even skepticism about what you're learning, and an openness about and an encouragement for people, pupils, group members, you as a client of a healer, for example, to ask questions, to express doubt, to express concern, or when you're not feeling comfortable. That is my summary of the 10 forms of spiritual abuse. I have also gone into more detail on my blog, so if you want more information on any of those, pop on over to the blog. I'll put the link in the section below. If you have experienced some form of spiritual abuse, either listed here or something else that I have not included, then it's important to recognise you can heal from it. Though the impact of some form of spiritual abuse can be really affect you on a very deep level emotionally. You can feel held back, you might feel slightly depressed, you might feel concerned, not sure what your next options are, you might feel quite isolated. You can and will recover. The 4 tips I want to give you to help you avoid spiritual abuse are that you have to be your own guru. You can't give away your power, your decision-making ability, and put too much trust in people before they have earned it. You also have to use your intuition. If you're getting a strange feeling about something or someone, don't ignore it. Often when we push these bodily sensations to the side, we may be trying to keep to a social norm. It may feel inconvenient to speak up or back out of an agreement. We may be afraid of feeling shameful because we've changed our mind about someone. But that's perfectly okay. It's better to change your mind or to take a step back or to listen and pay attention to the warning signals in your own body, a gut feeling, than to get far down the line and suddenly realise, oh my goodness, I wish I'd listened more to my intuition. The other thing is just to be very thorough and just to make sure that you're being thorough in your research before you get involved with a healing group or a spiritual group or a psychic unfoldment group, or for working more in depth with a particular healer. Be thorough, but expect them to be thorough too. You shouldn't have the feeling that they're kind of desperate to draw you in, or there's any kind of pressure or manipulation. There should be a gentle probing to make sure that you're both the right fit for each other, so that you have the feeling that your healer or your spiritual teacher has your best interests at heart. And the 4th point is just that you should feel safe and respected at all times. There is a principle that most healers adhere to, and that is to do no harm. We as healers, as spiritual people, we have to put the people that we're working with at the centre of all that we do, and to make sure that we are not inadvertently tripping them up or causing them damage because of our own lack of training, our own lack of awareness, and just not really being prepared to support them in the best ways. And if you ever at any point do not feel that you are safe or that you're being respected, then that's just a sign again to take a step back and to consider what's really going on. And if you can, try and raise it with the person concerned, but if you're not feeling safe to do so, then that may be a sign that there's something going on that isn't quite right, and you may need to take some affirmative action to protect yourself. So that is it for today. That's my 10 forms of spiritual abuse list. Now, as I said, if you want more information, do pop over to the website. I'll put the link to the blog post in the link below. I'm also going to give you an extra. If you want to know exactly what you should be looking for in a spiritual teacher and what you should be looking for in a potential healer or energy worker or therapist, I'm going to give you a download which will give you a kind of checklist of things that you can ask your potential new guide about, and again that will help you to know what is right, what is good, and what could be potentially problematic. I hope that these tips have been really helpful. If you have any comments, do pop them in the thing below. If you like this video, please remember to subscribe to my channel. You can also sign up to my weekly good vibes, which I'll send you by email. I'll put the links in the description below. Sending you lots of love, have lots of fun this week, and I'll see you very soon. Take care. Bye.